She was already on her knees when it started. Her wedding gown was torn at the bottom. Her hands were pressed flat into the ground. Her spine was twisting beneath her skin like something alive was trying to get out. Thabo was screaming her name. The guests were still dancing inside the hall. Music loud, laughter loud. Nobody knew that outside, behind the building, the bride was no longer fully human. The green light that poured from her eyes lit up the dark corner they were standing in. Her legs pressed together slowly, bones cracking, skin rippling, and then the tail came. Long emerald, covered in scales that shimmered like oil on water. Thabo stepped back and hit the wall. His mouth was open but no sound came out. And Zola looked up at him from the ground with tears running down her face, and said the words that broke everything. This is what I am.
This is what I am.
This is what I tried to hide from you.
This is what I tried to hide from you.
But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Every story has a beginning. And this one began on a road that Thabo should never have been on that night. Hello besties. Welcome to the Rhythms Tales. Please like, share and subscribe. Also turn on the notification button so you won't miss out on more intense stories like this. Now, let us go back to where it all started. Thabo was not the kind of man who invited trouble. He was the kind of man who ironed his shirts the night before work. The kind of man who arrived at meetings 10 minutes early and left when the agenda was finished. The kind of man who checked his tires every Sunday morning and kept a small notepad in his glove compartment for things he needed to remember. He was a civil engineer in Oguta city, and among his colleagues, his reputation was simple and solid. Thabo did not cut corners. If a measurement was wrong by half a centimeter, he corrected it. If a plan had one weak point, he tore the whole thing and started again. If a structure was not safe, it did not get built. Period. That was Thabo. Calm, careful, precise. A man who believed that if you paid enough attention to the details of your life, nothing bad could surprise you. He was wrong, but he did not know that yet. It happened on a Thursday evening. He had stayed late at the office reviewing blueprints for a bridge project near the eastern edge of the city. By the time he packed his bag and said goodnight to the security guard at the front gate, the sky was already the deep blue-black of a night that had fully committed to being dark. He drove out of the city and onto the long road that cut through Igodo Forest. A shortcut he had used many times before without incident. The trees on either side of the road were thick and old, their branches reaching over the tarmac like arms trying to join hands across a gap they could never quite close. His headlights were the only lights for as far as he could see in either direction. The radio played something soft and slow. He hummed along without thinking, his mind still half in the office, running numbers, checking distances. Then she was there. She appeared so suddenly that for a fraction of a second Thabo's brain refused to process what his eyes were seeing. A figure, standing directly in the center of the road. Thabo's foot hit the brake with every kilogram of force his body had. The car screamed. The tires shrieked against the road. The steering wheel shook in his hands. The car swerved left, then right, then shuddered to a violent stop with the front bumper less than 2 meters from where the figure was standing. Thabo sat in the driver's seat, breathing like he had just run a race. His hands were locked around the steering wheel. His knuckles had gone pale. The radio had cut itself off from the impact of the sudden stop. The forest was completely silent, and the figure was still standing there. Not running, not screaming, not even flinching. He sat there for 10 full seconds, just breathing. Then he opened the door. The night air hit him first, cold and sharp and smelling of wet bark, and something he could not name. His legs felt unsteady as he walked around to the front of the car. He expected to find someone injured. Someone in shock. Someone who had stumbled onto the road by accident and was now standing in the headlights too frightened to move. What he found was something else entirely. She was standing tall, her posture straight, her hands relaxed at her sides. She looked young, late 20s maybe, with dark smooth skin that caught the headlights and held them the way still water holds moonlight. Her hair was natural, loose, sitting softly on her shoulders. She was wearing a simple dress, plain and dark, like someone who had not expected to be seen tonight. But it was her eyes that stopped Thabo mid-step. They were green. Not the artificial green of colored contact lenses. Not a green he had ever seen in any human face before. A deep living green, the color of forest water in the rainy season, the color of light passing through leaves on a bright afternoon. And they were watching him with a stillness that made him feel like he was the one who had appeared out of nowhere, not her. Thabo swallowed. "Madam," he said carefully. "Are you okay?" I nearly." He stopped himself and tried again. "Are you hurt?" She did not answer immediately. She simply looked at him. Her expression was not fear. It was not anger. It was something harder to name. The look of someone working through a very complicated thought in a very short amount of time. Then she spoke. Her voice was low and soft, the kind of voice that did not need to be loud to be heard. "I am fine," she said. "I am sorry for standing in the road." Thabo exhaled slowly. "It's dangerous. This place is dark. What are you doing out here?" She looked to the side, toward the forest, like the trees might offer her an answer. Then she looked back at him. "I needed to leave somewhere. I needed to get away." "From where?" Thabo asked. She met his eyes. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she gave him a small, sad smile that looked like it cost her something. "It doesn't matter," she said softly. "Please. Can you give me a ride?" Thabo hesitated. He was a careful man. He did not do sudden things. He did not pick up strangers on forest roads at night. Every sensible instinct he had said to get back in the car, drive away, and call the road safety authority in the morning. But the road was too dark. The forest was too quiet. And something about leaving her there, alone on foot, in Igodo Forest at this hour, felt deeply and completely wrong. He nodded once. "Okay. You can come in." She walked toward the car. Even her steps were unusual, light and smooth, like she was moving across water rather than asphalt. Thabo watched her from the corner of his eye as he returned to the driver's side. He could not explain it then, and he would not be able to explain it later. There was simply something about her that did not fit neatly into the world he knew, like a color that existed just outside the range the human eye was supposed to see. When they were both inside the car and Thabo switched the interior light back on, he saw her face clearly for the first time. She was even more striking up close. But it was still the eyes that held his attention. Green and deep and glowing faintly, like something behind them was lit. He cleared his throat. "My name is Thabo." She turned to look at him and said, "I am Zola." "Nice to meet you, Zola. Where should I take you?" She looked out the window into the dark trees. "Anywhere far from here," she said quietly. "Somewhere I can rest." The way she said it, tired, almost defeated, like someone who had been running for a very long time, and was only just now allowing themselves to admit it, sent a chill through Thabo that he could not entirely explain. He did not ask more questions. He started the engine and pulled back onto the road. They drove in silence for a while. The forest moved slowly past them. The radio stayed off. Thabo focused on the road, but his attention kept drifting to the woman beside him. She sat still, her hands in her lap, her eyes fixed on the passing trees. She barely blinked. And Thabo had the strange, irrational feeling that the forest outside was watching her. The way you sometimes feel in a dark room that the darkness itself is aware of you. He was about to say something, he did not know what, when he saw it. In the rearview mirror, a shadow, moving across the road behind them, long and thick and low to the ground, sliding like something enormous pulling itself forward. Thabo's foot lifted from the accelerator, before he even told it to. The car slowed. He stared into the mirror. The shadow was gone. "Did you see that?" he asked quietly. Beside him, Zola had gone very still. Her hands, which had been resting loosely in her lap, were now pressed flat against her thighs. "Yes," she said. Her voice had changed, tighter, more controlled. "Keep driving." "What was that?" "Just drive," she said again. So he did. They left the forest and entered the outer lights of Oguta city. And Thabo felt the tension in his chest loosen slightly as the street lamps began to appear. He dropped Zola near a small shop at the edge of a quiet neighborhood, as she requested. She stepped out of the car slowly and turned to face him through the open door. "Thank you for helping me," she said. Thabo looked at her. "Will you be okay?" "Yes," she said, though the way she said it made him certain she did not quite believe it herself. "If you need anything." "Good night, Thabo," she said softly. And she walked away into the dim street, her footsteps making almost no sound at all. Thabo watched her until she disappeared around a corner. Then he sat in the quiet car for a long moment, alone with the engine humming and the city lights bleeding through the windscreen. He told himself it was nothing. He told himself he had simply helped a woman in need, and that was the end of it. He told himself that the shadow in the mirror had been a trick of the headlights and the dark. He told himself all of these things, and he did not believe any of them. The next morning at work, he made the mistake of telling his friends. Bao and Tun sat across from him at the small table outside the site office, eating chin-chin from a shared bag, and listened to the whole story with the focused attention of men who smelled entertainment. When Thabo finished, Bao pointed a finger at him. "My brother," he said solemnly. "This is how every horror film I have ever watched in my life begins." Tun shook his head slowly. Green eyes. Standing in the middle of a forest road at midnight. No explanation for where she came from. He paused. "Thabo, that is not a woman. That is a situation." Bao nodded. "A situation with good skin." "Please be serious," Thabo said. "We are serious," Tun said. "We are seriously telling you to be careful." Thabo waved them off and went back to work. But his mind stayed on her all day. The green eyes, the shadow in the mirror, the way she walked, the way she had said it doesn't matter, like someone who had given up expecting the world to understand her. He thought about her while reviewing the bridge plans. He thought about her while eating lunch. He thought about her while driving home. And then, as he stopped at a food stall near his street to buy dinner, he heard his name. Soft, clear, certain. Thabo. He turned around. Zola was standing 2 meters away, wearing the same dark dress as the night before, holding nothing, standing among the noise and movement of the evening market like a stone in the middle of a moving river. People walked around her and past her, and she did not move, did not look at them, only looked at him. Thabo blinked. "Zola, how did you find me?" She came closer, stopping just out of reach. "I told you I needed to get away," she said. "I did not know where to go, so I came here." Thabo looked at her face. In the warm light of the food stall lanterns, without the cold of the forest and the fear of the near accident, she looked different. Still beautiful. Still unusual. But also tired. Deeply, thoroughly tired. The way people look when they have been strong for too long and the strength is beginning to cost them more than they can afford. "Do you need help?" he asked. "A place to stay?" She nodded slowly. "Just for tonight." He should have said no. Every careful, measured, organized part of him knew that he should have said no. But he looked at her eyes, those impossible green eyes, and what he saw in them was not danger. It was exhaustion. It was someone at the end of a very long road with nowhere left to turn. "Okay," he said. "One night." That one night changed everything. Now. And this is the part where we need you to do something very important. If you are watching this story right now and you have not yet subscribed to this channel, stop. Think about it. You found this story. You are this far in. And there is so much more coming. People who do not subscribe miss the next part. And trust us when we say, you do not want to miss the next part of this story. Hit subscribe. Turn on the bell. Do it now, before Zola walks through Thabo's door and nothing is ever the same again. Zola stayed one night. Then another. Then a week passed and neither of them said anything about her leaving, because neither of them wanted to. They talked in the evenings, long, winding conversations that started with small things and ended in the deep hours of the night with Thabo telling her about his childhood, his grandmother in Oguta village, his dreams for the bridge he was designing, and Zola listening with the kind of attention that made a person feel like everything they said mattered. She never looked at her phone. She never interrupted. She simply listened, her green eyes steady on his face, and when he finished she would ask one quiet question that showed she had heard every word. She told him things too, small things. That she liked the smell of rain on hot ground. That she had never learned to cook pepper soup properly, and did not care. That she had seen things in her life that she wished she could unsee. But she never told him where she came from. She never mentioned family. She never explained the road or the forest or what she had been running from. Whenever he edged toward those questions, she would smile gently and say, "Some stories keep better when they wait." And because he was falling in love with her, quietly, steadily, the way a river rises in the rainy season, Not all at once but continuously, he let it go. He told himself there was time. He told himself she would tell him when she was ready. He told himself that what he could see of her was enough to trust. He did not yet know what he could not see. People around them began to notice. Neighbors greeted them together in the mornings. Colleagues at his office asked who the beautiful woman was that dropped him lunch at the site gate on Wednesdays. The woman at the market down the road started packing their shopping into one bag without being asked. Bao and Tun met her twice and said nothing. Which from those two was the most powerful endorsement possible? She is different. Tun told Thabo one afternoon when Zola had stepped away to take what she said was a phone call. Though Thabo had never seen her actually use a phone. But different in a way that feels important. Not dangerous. I know, Thabo said. You love her, Bao said. It was not a question. Thabo was quiet for a moment. I think I do. Bao nodded slowly. Then be careful with that. Love is the only thing that can make a careful man careless. At the time, Thabo thought Bao was being dramatic. He would think about those words many times later, in very different circumstances. One Saturday morning, Thabo announced that he wanted to visit Mama Chisholm, his grandmother, the woman who had raised him after his parents died young. The woman who lived in Oguta village 2 hours from the city and who had not seen him in almost 8 months. He wanted Zola to come with him. He wanted the two most important people in his life to be in the same room. Zola agreed. But he noticed something flicker in her eyes when he said the word village. Something quick and complicated, gone almost before he could identify it. Are you sure you want to go? He asked. Of course, she said. And her smile was warm and easy. I want to meet her. They packed light and left early. The drive started pleasantly. Bright morning, clear roads, music playing low. But as the city fell behind them and the roads narrowed and the trees on either side grew taller and closer together, Zola grew quieter. By the time they were 20 minutes from Oguta, she had not spoken in half an hour. She sat with her hands flat on her thighs, the same position she had taken that first night in the forest, watching the trees pass with an expression that Thabo could not read. You are quiet, he said. I am thinking, she said. About what? She turned to look at him. For a moment she seemed to be deciding something. Then she looked back at the trees. About life, she said softly. He did not push. He kept driving. Mama Chisholm was sitting under her mango tree when they pulled through the compound gate. A small, wiry woman with white locks piled loosely on her head, deep lines in her dark face, and eyes so sharp they seemed to cut through whatever they rested on. She was shelling groundnuts into a clay bowl, and she did not stop when the car came in. She watched it park. She watched Thabo step out, and then she set the bowl down, rose to her feet with the careful steadiness of someone whose bones had earned the right to take their time, and spread her arms wide. My son, she said. Come here. Thabo crossed the yard and hugged her. She was small but her arms were strong, and she held him for a long moment with her chin on his shoulder. You have been away too long, she said into his neck. Too long. I know, Mama. I am sorry. She pulled back and held his face in both her palms, studying him. You look well, she said. You look like something good has happened to you. Something has, he said, and he turned. Mama, this is Zola. Mama Chisholm turned. What happened next was small, and would have been invisible to anyone who did not know her face. The warmth in her eyes, the soft, open warmth she had just given Thabo, did not leave, but something moved behind it. Something careful and watchful stepped forward and stood just behind the warmth, looking out through it. Her gaze moved over Zola from head to toe and back again. Slowly, the way you check a door before opening it. And then it settled on Zola's eyes, and stayed there. Zola stepped forward and bowed her head politely. Good afternoon, Mama. It is a pleasure to meet you. Mama Chisholm was quiet for just a moment too long. Welcome, she said. Her voice was neutral. Not warm. Not cold. Neutral in the careful way of someone choosing their words like they are choosing their steps across a bridge they are not sure will hold. Thabo noticed the pause. He pushed past it. We came to spend the weekend, Mama. I hope that is fine. Yes, she said, still watching Zola. Come inside. The afternoon passed with the ordinary rhythms of a village visit. Mama Chisholm cooked pepper soup, fried plantain, white rice with stew that smelled like childhood. They ate at the low table in the main room. Conversation flowed between Thabo and his grandmother. Updates about the city, the bridge project, old neighbors who had moved away, new ones who had come. Zola contributed politely when addressed, smiled easily, helped clear the table without being asked. But Mama Chisholm watched her. Every time Zola moved, every time she laughed, every time she reached across the table, Mama Chisholm watched. Not rudely, not obviously. With the quiet, patient attention of a woman who had lived long enough to know that the things worth watching never announce themselves. Late in the afternoon, Thabo stepped outside to take a work call. It was brief, 5 minutes, maybe less. When he came back through the front door, Mama Chisholm was waiting just inside. She grabbed his arm the moment he crossed the threshold and pulled him sharply to the side, into the narrow corridor that led to the back of the house. "Mama, what?" "Shoo," she said, her voice low and urgent. She pulled him further until they were near the back door, away from the room where Zola was washing dishes. Then she turned to face him, and he saw it clearly for the first time, fear. In Mama Chisholm's eyes. Not worry. Not suspicion. Fear. "Mama, what is wrong?" She held his wrist with both hands. "That girl," she said. "The one you brought here." "Zola." "Her shadow," Mama Chisholm whispered. "It does not belong to her body." Thabo blinked. "What does that mean?" "When she walked through my front door this afternoon," the old woman said, keeping her voice barely above a breath, "I saw something behind her. On the floor. Moving. Long, thick. It did not match the shape of her body." She tightened her grip on his wrist. "I told myself I was tired. Old eyes, old tricks. But then I watched again. And I saw it again. A shadow behind her, Thabo. Long and crawling. And it is not hers." Thabo rubbed the back of his neck. He wanted to be rational. He wanted to say she was tired, that the light in the house was uneven, that shadows did strange things in the late afternoon. "Mama," he said carefully. "She is a good person. She has been with me for weeks. She has never." "Good people also carry dangerous things," Mama Chisholm cut in, her voice firm. "Goodness and danger are not enemies. They can live in the same body." She let go of his wrist and looked him directly in the eye. Where did she come from? What does she do? Who are her people? Thabo was quiet. "You don't know," Mama Chisholm said. "Not as an accusation. As a fact. My son, you are in love with a woman you do not know." "I know her," he said, but the words felt thinner than he wanted them to. "You know what she has shown you," Mama Chisholm said. "That is not the same thing." Before Thabo could respond, there was a soft sound from the direction of the corridor. They both went still. Footsteps. Light and smooth. Moving toward them. Thabo turned and found Zola standing at the corridor entrance, holding a damp cloth she had used to wipe the table. Her expression was gentle. Concerned. "Is everything all right?" she asked. The silence that followed lasted only 2 seconds. But in those 2 seconds, Thabo watched his grandmother's body change. The fear in her eyes shuddered behind a careful, composed expression. She stepped back slightly, just one small step, but Thabo saw it. "Everything is fine," Mama Chisholm said. "I was just checking on my son." Zola looked between them. Her green eyes moved from Mama Chisholm's face to Thabo's and back again. She nodded slowly. "Of course," she said. And she turned and walked back toward the kitchen. That night, after the dinner plates were cleared and everyone had said goodnight and retired to their rooms, the house grew quiet. Thabo lay in the small back bedroom staring at the ceiling, thinking about what his grandmother had said. Down the hall, Mama Chisholm lay with her eyes half open, watching the shadows on her own ceiling. And outside, under the wide quiet sky of Oguta village, Zola stood alone in the compound, her face turned up to the moon. She stood so still she could have been a carving. Her lips moved very slightly, barely even forming words, more like shaped breath than actual speech. "They know I am here," she whispered to the moon. "They can feel me. I cannot stay much longer." The night around her listened. Inside, Mama Chisholm sat up sharply in her bed. She had heard nothing, but she felt something, a shift in the air, a change in the weight of the night outside her window. She pressed her hand to her chest and closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her decision was made. She rose, went down the corridor, and knocked softly on Thabo's door. He opened it immediately. He had not been sleeping either. Mama. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. She sat on the edge of his bed and folded her hands in her lap. For a long moment she said nothing, just gathered her thoughts the way she gathered her locks in the morning. Carefully, deliberately, putting each piece in its right place. I need to tell you something, she said at last, and I need you to listen without interrupting me. He sat down beside her. I am listening. I have lived in this world long enough to know the difference between what the eyes can see and what the spirit can sense, she began. When that girl sat at my table this evening, I watched her. Not with suspicion. With attention. There is a difference. She paused. The lamp on the table flickered twice when she moved. The first time I told myself it was the wind. The second time she bent to pick up something she had dropped. And Thabo, she stopped. What, he said. The shadow on the wall behind her, Mama Chisholm said quietly. When she bent. When the lamp flickered. I saw it. On the wall behind her. Long, shaped like something that was not a woman. Not a human woman. She looked at her grandson. Something is attached to that girl. Something old. And it travels with her wherever she goes. Thabo sat very still. Whatever she is carrying, Mama Chisholm continued. It is not a small thing. And I am afraid, not for myself. I am afraid for you. Because I can see that you love her. And love makes a person blind to exactly the things they most need to see. Thabo exhaled slowly. Mama. She saved me once. On a road in the forest. She was on the road in the forest? Mama Chisholm interrupted, her voice sharpening. He stopped. He had never told her that part of the story. How they met, where she had been standing, what time of night it was. He told her now. All of it. The empty road, the sudden appearance, the shadow in the rearview mirror. The way she said she was running from somewhere but would not say where. Mama Chisholm listened without moving. When he finished, she was silent for a long time. Outside, the village night made its usual small sounds. A dog somewhere in the distance, a cricket close by, the occasional rustle of leaves. Then she said very quietly, Thabo. A woman does not appear on a forest road at midnight with no car, no phone, no bag, no shoes. And the only unusual thing about her is eyes that glow and a shadow that does not fit her body. She looked at him steadily. That is not a coincidence. That is a presentation. A presentation, he repeated. Someone put her there, Mama Chisholm said. Or something did. A knock on the door. Both of them froze. 3 soft knocks. Patient. Unhurried. Thabo. Zola's voice. Low and calm from the other side of the door. Are you all right? I heard movement. Thabo looked at his grandmother. Mama Chisholm had gone perfectly still. Her eyes fixed on the door. Her hands pressed together in her lap. Thabo stood. Yes, he said, keeping his voice even. Mama and I were just talking. Go back to sleep. A pause. Then, okay. Good night. Footsteps, moving back down the corridor. Light and smooth. Mama Chisholm let out a slow, controlled breath. She stood up and moved toward the door. Before she opened it, she turned back one last time. Open your eyes, my son, she said. Before it is too late to use them. She left. Thabo sat alone in the dark room. Outside his window the compound was quiet. But somewhere between the walls of his chest, something that had been sleeping was beginning, very slowly, to wake up. The following morning they drove back to Abiaku City. Zola was quieter than usual, her eyes moving to the trees along the roadside as they drove. Thabo tried twice to start conversation, and both times she answered in short, careful sentences that closed the door gently on anything deeper. He did not push. He drove. He thought. Back in the city, the days continued, but something had shifted between them, slight as the movement of a shadow when the sun moves. Thabo watched her more carefully now, not with suspicion, not with accusation, but with the attention of a man who had been told to look. He noticed things he had been too comfortable to see before. The way she always sat facing the door in any room they entered. The way she paused sometimes in the middle of a sentence, as if she had heard something he had not. The way she looked at the moon on clear nights with an expression that was not wonder, but something more complicated. something closer to grief. And there was this. Occasionally, when the light in the apartment shifted, when the late afternoon sun came through the windows at a particular angle, the shadow she cast on the wall was slightly longer than it should have been. And once, just once, when she was standing at the kitchen window with her back to him, and the light was exactly right, he saw it. A shape in her shadow, long, low, curling at the edge like something that was not fully a woman. He said nothing, but he filed it away in the careful, organized mind of a man who built things for a living and knew that every structure began to fail from the things you refused to examine. Weeks passed. The thing between them that had shifted did not shift back. But it also did not break. Because despite everything, despite Mama Chisholm's warning, despite the shadow on the wall, despite all the unanswered questions, Thabo still came home every evening and found Zola there, making tea or reading by the window or simply sitting in the quiet of the apartment with a stillness that had come to feel, in spite of everything, like peace. And he still sat beside her. And they still talked. And the thing he felt when she looked at him, that warm, specific, unmistakable thing, did not care about shadows or warnings or what could not be explained. If you're still here, following Thabo and Zola's journey and wondering what's coming next, hit that subscribe button. I'm putting my all into this story, and your support means the world. Drop a comment with your predictions for what happens next, let me know where you're watching from, and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. Believe me, you won't want to miss what's coming. And if you don't subscribe, you'll miss out on the most thrilling part of the story. Don't make that mistake.